Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the One Hub Racing YouTube channel. Now it is the turn of the Pinnacle tier to take centre stage for round 7 around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve as we conclude our very short tour of the Americas. My name is Jake, and as always I'm joined by Austin. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastically, Jake. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Last time out, we raced at the Circuit of the Americas, and undoubtedly the race featured the most dramatic conclusion to a Pinnacle tier race this season, as Gilles overtook Louis on the final lap to take victory, despite a strategy call from Gilles that we both thought really put him up against it. If that wasn't drama, we also then saw an unbelievable move at the very last corner of the race by Samster to grab third off Josh. In terms of the rest of the points, quickly, they were completed by Lakitu, Larkin, Konzo, Slash and Glock, with Netsky grabbing 10th following Raikkonen's unfortunate disqualification for not adhering to the mandatory 2-stop rule. Gilles and Knowsley also got the additional points each for the fastest laps, both inside and outside the top 10 respectively. A tough question to start with, as we've seen some great races already this season, but would you say last week was the best race of the season so far?
Looking back, I think that is fair to say, yes. I mean, it's been amazing to watch. It's been the first time, by the way, that all drivers who started also finished in One Hub overall this season, not just in our tier, but in general. First time this has happened. Of course, we had one driver who finished but wasn't classified, with Raikkonen being disqualified for not sticking to the mandatory 2-stop rule and only pitting once. But still, you know, you gotta take the rough with the smooth, and I think it was very, very entertaining to watch from beginning to end.
Definitely, and the ending to the race was something I've not seen in a very, very long time. Absolute drama throughout the top of the field. In terms of how the Drivers' Championship is looking, Louis remains on charge on 112 points. However, Gilles has reduced his lead to 40 points. Now, Gilles and Louis are not racing tonight for very different reasons. I'll let you, Austin, if you like, go over those reasons.
Well, Louis is here today, at least, but he wanted... There are rumours, at least, that Louis is not really interested in racing that much in One Hub anymore. The complaint that really comes from him, for the most part, is that it really comes from him. It's not about a complaint about One Hub necessarily. It's a complaint about that we tempt him, because we do allow some assists. We tempt him to still use the racing line, which at this point Louis is known to be the racing line merchant in the community, and he does. I think it's empirically proven that he does fare slightly or significantly worse, depending on who you ask, when he has the racing line turned off. So he is allowed to use it here at One Hub, but in other leagues that he's competing in, at least in some of them, he is not allowed to use the racing line. And he really... Oh, now he left again. Maybe he's not racing. I don't know what that was. Or maybe he just has some sort of bug. I've seen that before, where I have to leave the lobby, then come back because all the other names aren't loading in properly. So, but yeah, for Louis, it's a question of, there are rumors whether he's gonna leave, but we'll see whether he actually does, or whether he does stick through this season and leaves at the end of Season 16 and just doesn't rejoin for Season 17. But for Gilles, it's only a one-off. He hopefully will be back in the next 3 races that we have to conclude the season. And speaking of Gilles, we have obviously another IGK driver in here who will not be participating tonight, and that is IGK Zach, as there is Louis back, thankfully. As Zach is once again a little bit tied for time, because he has to participate. I mean, he has to participate. He really, I'm pretty sure he would choose that over One Hub in the French F4. And I gotta say, obviously we wish him the best for that. But looking by the first practice time, by the first practice timesheets, I think the man is doing well for himself. He was atop the timing sheets after the first practice session at the Circuit Paul Ricard.
You have beaten me to the punch. I was literally going to come on to that in a second or so.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Absolutely. I echo those sentiments. Wish him all the best. And judging off practice, he doesn't need any luck. So, yeah, all the best to him on that one. I was going to quickly touch on the Constructors' Championship. Williams still hold a 23-point lead over their new nearest challengers, Red Bull, while Haas dropped to third. I was going to say in part due to Zach's French F4 commitments, which saw him miss the last race and, of course, this one as well. What I was going to ask you, actually, is we saw Netski showcase some great pace last week, certainly in qualifying. Could he be a secret weapon for Red Bull in the coming weeks?
I mean, every time you start and you're instantly thrown into the top tier, and in your first race you finish in the points, that's always a good sign. You don't no one expects for you to be the next Louis, or the next Gil, or the next Zach. That's not required, but to jump into the podium to your first race and instantly be sort of on the pace and score points and be consistent already throughout the race, I gotta say, it bodes very well for his future in One Hub, and it certainly bodes very well for Red Bull to have a driver like Netski.
And the more races he does, hopefully the better it'll get for him, the more obviously experience he gets in One Hub. It should definitely help him out in the races to come. Of course, the drivers and teams were, as always, involved in the One Hub Racing Media Day yesterday. Most drivers normally are quite modest in their aims for the race, I've found. But Lakita was quite consistently showed confidence in his interviews, and he said tonight that he's aiming to be on the podium. Do you think that self-confidence has really rubbed off onto his performances?
It seems so. The question is, what was there first? The chicken or the egg, you know? Did he get the confidence from the good results, or did he just change his mindset, become more confident, and then decided to, or then that paid off by getting better results? I think it's sort of a mix. You can influence your own mindset and sort of, you know, get yourself into the right frame of mind, and then the results maybe tend to be better. So I think it probably could be a mixture of both, but he started... What is the opposite of a vicious cycle? I mean, the vicious cycle, you know, it gets worse and worse and worse. For Lakita, it could be that he just started a cycle where it gets better and better and better.
I'll go with a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think that might be the right term.
That sounds good.
Another driver who expressed confidence in the media day was Cliffy. It's a track that he admits he absolutely loves, and he says he intends to turn some heads tonight and maybe get onto the podium, despite overall what's been a quite tough season for him. Now, the last time we heard Cliffy sound this confident, he was incredibly fast at Monaco and was actually battling for the win. Do you suspect he might do something similar tonight?
I mean, if I look at all of his results, let's exclude Monaco just for a second for the sake of this question. I'll bring it back in later. Without Monaco, he scored 1 point. 1 point. That was a 10th place around... Is that Belgium? I can't really read my own notes. Yes, that was Belgium. Apart from that, he's always been outside the points, and he didn't get the fastest lap either. You know, we do have the fastest lap point outside the top 10. And not once did he get that in 4 attempts. He didn't get it last week, where he was beaten by Knowlesy to that. He always finishes. That's the one thing you got to give him credit for. By the way, he was beaten by Knowlesy again the week prior at Austria. So Knowlesy is someone who... He's only got 2 points, but he hasn't had a points finish yet and still has 2 points out of 2 races. So... Driver of the day, not driver of the day, fastest lap, both times outside the top 10. Very interesting little stat there. Maybe Knowlesy this time with 13 drivers might be able to pull one out of the bag and actually get a points finish. But for Cliffy, Monaco, yeah, he was very confident. I mean, it did pay off, but you have to say as well, we had 8 drivers finishing Monaco. We had an attendance that wasn't that high. Then again, we have the same here, but we had plenty of drivers who weren't there for that race, who I think we have No, actually, Gil wasn't there. Gil isn't here today. Josh wasn't there. Josh isn't here today. Zach wasn't there. Zach isn't here today. It's very similar. It's quite interesting, but we have a new driver on the grid. In fact, we have 2 new drivers on the grid, but only one taking a spot here today. The other one we're still waiting for to make his debut next week, hopefully. It's FRL Chapelele. Used to be known as VRT Chapelele, and I can tell you, I've seen the man drive. He can bring the fight to Louis. He should be someone to instantly battle for podiums, and that's going to make it harder for Cliffy.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because actually, Chapelele, I'm going to hope I keep pronouncing that right, is actually about to start his first flying lap. I don't know if you want to take us around a lap around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
Yeah. Sure. Very short circuit here, 4.3 kilometers, very fast lap as well. As we take turn 1 here, the right-hander doesn't really count as turn 1, so this left-hander turn 1 instantly followed up by turn 2. You want to get the right line, and I feel like Chapelele didn't get it there. This little right-hand kink doesn't count. Then turn 3, easy invalidation potential. Turn 4, you want to carry all the speed here for turn 5, and then first sector's already over. Turn 6, I could use a little bit more curb on the inside there. Turn 7, you want to get early onto the throttle. This is the first DRS straight here. It's not very long. It's not a good overtaking opportunity, because here turn 8, very tight and narrow, not a good overtaking spot. Turn 9 and invalidate, also good invalidation spot right there, and we've just seen it. But we continue still to the hairpin, turn 10, and a little bit wide there, missed the apex by a bit, runs very wide. That's what you want to see. You want to be early on the throttle, because this straight right here, very, very long. Turn 12, this right-hand kink, that actually does count as one. And then the final chicane coming up here, turns 13 and 14. He takes it straight into the pit lane, but the chicane turns 13 and 14. Wall of Champions, another set of corners, just like turns 3 and 4, and turns 8 and 9, where it's very easy to invalidate your lap and get a corner cut warning.
This is definitely one of, I would say, arguably the toughest track in terms of penalties. I think if you can get through this race without picking up a penalty, you've done a very fine job indeed. In fact, I've certainly seen in other instances, sometimes drivers can get disqualified around here due to the excessive amount of penalties they can pick up. So that's something to look out for across the race, and it could be a key outcome in the result tonight, as Netsky takes a lot of curb around the final couple of corners, but he gets away with it and goes straight to the top of the timesheets, 1/10 ahead of Louis. So very nice effort there from Netsky for his opening lap, and Louis clearly not going for the same tactic he went for in Austin of trying to get outside the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you really don't want to go for that here, because one, it is rather easy to overtake. You have, if you really want to do it, you can do it into turn 1. If you really want to do it, you can do it into turn 8. You can try that with the DRS there. You can try it into the hairpin if you get a better run through turns 8 and 9. And of course, the best overtaking spot is into the final chicane, into turn 13, 14. And get past on the long straight down towards that wall of champions and get the position there.
Very different sort of track to the one we had last week, and that's going to bring about different strategies. I think we're going to see the soft tyre being a lot more favourable here due to overheating not being as much of a problem. We haven't really got any long corners here where the tyres get a chance to be overheated as much, so, and the tyre wear around here is not especially bad, and of course the pit lane itself, you don't see much of a loss in terms of time there either. So it's in terms of a strategy around here, with it being a mandatory 2-stop, soft medium's probably the preferred strategy. We might see some drivers going for 2 medium stints, but I wouldn't expect that to see the hard tyre used much. Would that be something you would say as well?
Definitely. If you look at the time loss between the different tyre compounds, sometimes English is hard. It's hard. I can't speak today. I really can't. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, the difference between the different tyre compounds is quite significant. Not between the softs and the mediums. That's just half a second per lap. That's actually not too much. You could try and qualify on the mediums here. Not that it makes much sense with a mandatory 2-stop. But still, you know, it is a strategy that is possible. But the hard tyre, on the other hand, is 1.4 seconds slower than the softs and 9/10 slower than the medium. So, big gap there. And if we look at the lifespan, this is where it gets even more interesting. The softs, they're not that durable, but they're certainly durable enough for a 2-stop here, for a soft, medium 2-stop with 12 laps. You don't want to take him 12 laps at the end of the day. You probably, auto strategy, you're probably going to take him around 10, maybe 11 if you want to go really long, maybe just 9 if you want to go for an undercut. The mediums lost 19. That's more than half of the race. That is significant. But the hards, they only last 24, so that's just 5 laps longer. It's not that much in terms of a difference. And again, you lose 9/10 more for a prolonged lifespan of 5 laps. It's really not worth it. The hard tyre is not a tyre we should see here tonight.
I just saw IGK Raikkonen attack the final chicane like his life depended on it. I'm very surprised they didn't invalidate his lap there. It must have been right on the limits, but it was good enough to put him 4th, which is a solid lap indeed. I was just on board with Konzo actually, and it's interesting. Konzo actually quite enjoyed the soft tyres at Austin, so based on that, I would expect him to go quite well here. So obviously he's got no problems using the soft tyre anyway. And obviously around here it's quite favourable to do so, so it might work out quite well in Konzo's favour. He's been one of those drivers who hasn't really tended to be that high up the grid in qualifying, but seems to use his consistency very well to get himself consistent points during races. And you could actually say that for both AlphaTauris really. That seems to be where Konzo and Larkin's strength comes from. They're not necessarily the best qualifiers, but they just seem to find good consistency that gets them into the points during the races.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be said, the AlphaTauris, I mean, if they don't have to show up for the team press conference next week and get asked about the consistency of their drivers, at least in this tier, I'll write in a complaint towards Jamie, the head of teams here at OneHub, and I'll ask him about this, because I gotta say, no other. So there are 2 drivers here. Oh, sorry, no, there are a couple more. Apologies. There are. Let me quickly find this. There are 1, 2. What was the other points finishes? 4 drivers. There we go. 4 drivers who have had a points finish every time they started, and had at least 5 race starts. So they only missed 1 race so far, maximum. 2 of those 4 drivers are both AlphaTauri drivers, Larkin and Konzo. They've scored every single time. Larkin all 6 races, the only one to do so in this tier. And Konzo, 5 races. The only one he missed was France, where obviously he didn't score. The other 2 drivers, by the way, are Lakitu and Samsa. Lakitu also missed France, Samsa missed Belgium. But apart from that, they've all done really well for themselves. And Larkin and Konzo are the only 2 to have not scored a podium, so they've never had their like a really high good result, but they've never had any lows either really. They've been so incredibly consistent over and over and over again, and that's a quality you need to have. There's a reason that we see Larkin right now 1 point behind 4th place in the championship, and Konzo right now is in 9th in the championship. So it's amazing to see both of them doing absolutely fantastically. And I always love consistency. I always love this when a driver just keeps getting decent results. They're not the fastest, they're not the most flashy, but they deliver every single Friday.
That's what it's all about, you know. I think pace is a lot easier to find sometimes than consistency is. It's very difficult to almost train yourself to be consistent. I think some drivers are almost just born with it. They know sometimes how to just get those results consistently, and that's what works for those 2 AlphaTauris. And they never tend to show the best on the Saturday, if you like, but come the race, they're always just there or thereabouts and there to pick up the pieces. And credit to them, and I reckon we're going to see them score some more good points, especially tonight, although it looks like we might have a 14th driver, because I noticed that Dan Murphy just joined. So, will he be able to take the start of the race? I believe he should, right?
Yeah, he will be starting from the back of the grid then.
As Lakitu does a very nice 107.5 to go a couple attempts ahead of Netsky, who actually had improved his time. Louis was on a second flying lap, but invalidated round V final chicane, turns 13 and 14. And now going to go on board with Glock, see what he's up to. He is on a lap, just through the hairpin now, so going on to the back straight. Glock's got 3 DRS zones here, so plenty of opportunity for overtaking, although I feel like this is also one of those tracks where DRS trains can quite easily develop, so that does kind of cancel out the effect somewhat, and that's
invalidated.
Yeah, that was always going to be invalidation. Quite a hefty cut right around the first part of the final chicane.
It needs to be said. He was on pace for a low 1 minute 8. That could have been 4th, 5th, 6th, at worst 7th in that sort of range. But obviously, with the invalidation, that was all for nothing. And the worst part about invalidating your lap in that chicane is that not only do you invalidate the current lap, but also the next one.
So it's a double whammy in effect. Then you're pretty much consigning then to going back into the pits on that one, unfortunately. But it is one of those corners. It's so easy to do. I mean, I'm no professional, of course, but I've done it multiple times, and I don't think that's even on strict corner cutting. So there we go. Louis is on a personal best lap as he comes through the final chicane. He doesn't invalidate. That looks a pretty smooth run through there. Is it enough to improve Louis' position? Just it is, up to second, just off Lakitu's time. Lakitu's shown some very good pace so far in qualifying, it has to be said. And Netsky as well, once again showing that quali pace from last week wasn't a one-off. Hopefully he can follow it up in the race as well.
Yeah, I mean, for Lakitu, it's just an incredible run he's had in the last 4 races. P5, P2, P4, and the fastest lap in P5. It's once again this consistency that I was talking about. Getting top 5 results and at least 10 points every single time. And, you know, getting 18 there, then at Monaco, getting 13 at Austria. It just sets you up so well. You don't need to get the win every single time. You don't need to be the Louis. To be fair, even Louis didn't get the win every single time. Obviously, he had 2 second places this season and a DNF at Austria. But, you know, you don't have to be that sort of dominant. It is enough if you just constantly score good points, something in the range, ideally double digits, you know, it's a top 5 result. And Lakitu's doing just that, and then slowly but surely, he keeps moving up the order, he keeps moving up the ranks, and right now he's third in the standings, 16 points behind Gil, so today is his chance. If he gets a second place, or better, obviously, doesn't even need the fastest lap, he would overtake Gil in the standings.
And that would be a massive shot in the arm for Lakitu, especially considering the fact, as you touched on earlier, Louis is considering what to do in regards to the... obviously he's here tonight, but will he be here next week? Of course, we'll have to wait and see on that one. I'm just on board with Slash at the moment, who has invalidated his lap. I was actually going to come on to McLaren. They were called to a team's press conference this week, and they were quite dismayed how the season's gone so far. Obviously, they're asked about how they're looking forward to fit that Mercedes engine in the car in the next game. They're quite looking forward to that, but they're very disappointed with how it's gone just across all the tiers, but certainly in the Pinnacle tier, I think it has been a massive disappointment. Glock and Slash, we know, are very, very capable drivers, but they're currently only 9th in the Constructors. I know, obviously, we love to focus on drivers who are doing a great job, but could it be fair to say that McLaren have underperformed a bit this season?
I think that is a fair assessment. No offense, obviously, to the 2 drivers, but I mean, you look at the season so far. Slash finally now picking up points. He's been struggling for so long. 11, 13, 12 in the first 3 races. Then missed Monaco. Maybe that was a little bit of a godsend for him. Now 2 8th places in a row. For Glock as well, you see the improvement there too, with a little bit of a downfall back in Austria, but apart from that, P7, P6, P9, so they're starting to pick up points, but in a 10-race season, you don't have that many opportunities, and you need to make the most of them from the first race onward. And that's what McLaren missed, really. That's what both of them missed. I mean, they were one of the few teams in the first race to not score any points, and then they went on in the second race to not score any points. And then only in the third one was where Glock finally picked up 7th place and 6 points. But overall, they need to do more, and they need to get it going somehow. Maybe if there is a track that they look at on the calendar and they say, hey, we're good at this one, or one of us is good at this one, make the most of it. Try and absolutely make the most of it. And that's really the best way to go about things.
Hopefully for their sake they can pick up some good results in the remaining races to come. Tonight is another opportunity, of course, for them, and we'll see how they get on. Glock is yet to do a lap time. I believe he's invalidated both of his attempts so far, and Slash currently in P8. As some good laps just came in there. Samster went P4 on a 107.8, and Netsky further improved his time, but still only just adrift of the front row, less than a 10th in it between the top three. And if that's how close it's going to be during qualifying, it certainly whets our appetite for the race to see who could come out on top there. I'm going to actually go on board with Glock, who I believe has actually backed out of his lap, because that's not really a competitive time, but he's on at the moment. So I'll actually go on board instead with Cliffy, who's just starting his lap. 45 seconds left of the session, so this will be his only proper effort.
It would be good to go on board with Louis as Larkin goes and retires. Louis now through the final chicane. He has 2 purple sectors. Can he make it P1? Yes, he can by 10 milliseconds.
Wow.
That final sector was not his best sector. He lost a bit of time there, but it's still enough. Now Lakitu has invalidated. Will he be able to come across the line in time? That is the question. 12, 11, it's ticking down. He might be able to, but it's going to be really, really close. And he can't invalidate in the final chicane, or else it's all over. And he just makes it across the line with 1 second. With 1 second. So Lakitu will be the last driver to start the lap.
And Cliffy's invalidated around the final corner, so he at best will start 11th on a 117, which of course isn't representative in the slightest.
Here comes Knowlesy.
Knowlesy, what's Knowlesy up
hasn't set lap time yet.
Goes
this
10.
One looks okay. P10. I'm pretty sure he would like to start a little bit higher up the order, or maybe a tad bit lower. But Glock isn't going to improve. Cliffy and Chapelele aren't going to improve either. So let's see what Lakitu can do. Purple in the middle sector according to the game, but that's not actually accurate. However, he is green in the middle sector. Lost 7 thousandths of a second in the first sector to his own time. Now up by half a tenth.
Oh, he's invalidated around the far chicane, took too much curve.
Yeah, that concludes qualifying. So Louis does actually take pole position. What else is new? But Lakitu in second, and Netsky in his second race here in One Hub. On the second row, I gotta say, Red Bull may have had a fantastic driver, a fantastic nose for that driver, and snatching him away like that. I gotta say, I think Red Bull are very happy with that performance.
Definitely, and they'll be hoping that he can translate it into the race. Of course, this is his second race, so we'll see how he gets on. He did score a point in his first race, so hoping for an improvement from there. But here's the grid then. We've got Louis and Lakitu on the front row. We've got Netsky third, Samster fourth, Slash, who put in a great final lap there right at the end to put McLaren up in fifth. IGK Raikkonen in sixth. We've got Larkin seventh, Compassion in eighth. Konzo and Knowsley complete the top 10. And Glock in 11th. Cliffy will start 12th. It says Chapelele behind Dan Murphy, which seems slightly odd, seeing as Dan Murphy joined during qualifying, but we'll see how they line up.
Did it show Dan Murphy for you? Did it, because for me it showed no name.
Yeah, it showed Dan Murphy in 13th ahead of Chapelele.
Oh, okay.
for me.
Because for me, during the session, it showed Kimi Räikkönen as the name. And then at the end of the session, it shows no name. But yeah, Dan Murphy it still shows no name. Thank you very much for that one, Codemasters. Really appreciate that. But yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I mean, if you don't set a time, I mean, what can you do, really? Of course you could say, well, whoever joins first gets ahead, but, I mean, if we go by championship standings, obviously Chapelele is new. Dan Murphy has a point, literally and figuratively. He has 1 point in the championship. He has a P10 in Austria, so, you know, I think he has a claim to that spot based on championship standings. We don't have any practice results to go off of, so that's really all we can do, and by that, Dan Murphy gets 13th place. I don't know how the game works it out. Certainly not that way. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to matter too much. They're both in the last row on the grid. So, you know, I don't think it's going to matter too much. But indeed, Dan Murphy is ahead of Chapelele.
Controversial, perhaps. Let's have a look then at the tyres that everyone's starting on. So there's only really got to look out for those outside the top 10. Glock, Clippy and Chapelele have all opted to start on mediums, while Dan Murphy decides to go on softs. So interesting little strategy there. Would you say starting on mediums outside the top 10 is a wise move?
I mean, looking at the sky, yes. I mean, I see that, and I think there could be rain coming. Now the question is, when does the rain come? I would say with mediums, you give yourself the best from both worlds. You only lose half a second per lap, meaning if you can stay behind the next car in front after 2 laps, you get the DRS, and that basically carries you around the whole lap. And you also get 7 laps longer lifespan, meaning if the rain does wait a little bit longer, if it does come, but it waits, then the soft drivers have to pit, you can still stay out. So I don't think the medium to start the race is a bad call. I think outside the top 10 is certainly a preferable call, which is why I'm a bit surprised about Dan Murphy here starting on the softs.
We'll see how that plays out for him. Just a quick, as the cars line up, just a quick shout out to our sponsor, Next Level Racing, who will be providing rigs to the Going Gets Tough winner. If you want to follow them on Twitter, you can do at NextLVL Racing. So be sure to follow them for updates and just check out what's going on over on their side of things. But the cars are now pretty much lined up, and we are ready to get the action underway tonight. So we should see the lights start illuminating any second now, which they do now. And when they go out here at Montreal, let battle commence this evening. It looks like a fairly good start from Louis. Lakitu as well got off the line pretty well. They slot into places. That is, I believe, Slash moving down the inside of Samster. It goes side by side through turn 2. The top 3 is As You Were. Further down the field we have got, I believe that's Larkin, who's made a pretty decent start as well in the AlphaTauri, and in fact it is Samster who's gone back up to 4th, slotted in ahead of Slash. So it is As You Were in the top 5 positions. As I try and find Louis again, yeah, there we go. Louis still leads away ahead of Lakitu Netsky. The top 5 is pretty much As You Were, and thankfully it just seems to everyone's got through the first few corners unscathed.
Yeah, not just the top 5, As You Were, pretty much everywhere the same order as before. The only change is Larkin gained a position on Räikkönen, Nolsey gained one on Konzo, while Konzo lost another one now, and has Glock on his outside. That's going to be close. I think Glock may have him. Yes, Glock actually has him now. And Glock might actually pull another move here on Nolsey into the chicane. Is he going to try that? Yes, he is. And he gets it done as well. What an overtake, Glock. He came to fight. He really came to play here today. And he really shows already 2 positions on the first lap. No one's gained as much. Chapelele, meanwhile, has made it past Dan Murphy. So Chapelele back up to P13, where he might argue he should have started. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change it too much. And now they've switched back again. as Chapellette's made a mistake in turns 3 and 4. I don't exactly know what happened there, but now Nosey and Cliffy are fighting. Everything's going on. And Nosey dropping down further. Does he have damage? Let's see. Let me quickly find my... We have the telemetry. And I want to see... And no one has any damage. So, I don't know what happened there to Nosey, but he certainly lost himself positions.
Yeah, getting caught out there as the field sort of jumbled up towards the back of the pack. But thankfully nobody has damage, which is great to see at the end of lap 2 that we're now on. Louis leads away, just about 7 tenths ahead of Lakitu at the moment. We've already got our first penalty flash across the screen, and I think that's going to be something you're going to see quite a bit of over the race to come, because
we have more to come up. We have Netsky, Samster, and Chapelette already on 2 warnings, and now Slash as well. So expect the next ones to come over the course of this lap.
Yeah, the task system giving you great information as always. Massive thank you to IGKNs on that one. And it has to be said, Netsky was over the back of Lakitu, but has now dropped back slightly. I think he must have made a mistake somewhere. And he's now got Samster over the back of him, the top 2 getting away somewhat here. And it's going to be a tough fight here for Netsky, because he won't have DRS in front of him anymore. So Samster here's got a great chance to try and grab P3 here as they come up to the hairpin. This is all about the exit for Samster. Look, the fact Netsky runs a little bit deep. That wasn't the best of runs there for the Red Bull driver. So I think for Samster here, this could be quite a simple overtake. I don't really think Netsky's going to be able to do much to stop this. He's got the DRS open. He doesn't even really need to use the overtake button. He's already got the pass done before we get to the final chicane. And truth be told, Netsky's exit from the hairpin kind of made that a slam dunk for Samster there.
Yeah, it needs to be said though that Netsky at the start of the straight used some lean mix to basically, I would almost say he waved Samster by. I think the calculation in Netsky's head is, hey, if Samster with his race pace can pull me closer to the top 2 or keep me in the battle, then maybe I have a chance. And I think that's not too bad of a calculation, really, as he gets a little bit of a slide there out of turn 7. It's not really what you want to see, but one thing to note as well, we have multiple drivers with damage now. We have in the pits Dan Murphy, who has had his front wing changed. It was sort of half damage, which is quite significant, quite severe. And we also have Glock, Larkin, and Netsky with slight damage as well. I don't know where it happened, but it's reporting on the telemetry system damage for all 3 drivers, for Glock, Larkin, and Netsky. And for all 3 of them, it's the right side of the front wing. So maybe it happened in the World of Champions as Larkin goes into the pit lane now. That is probably for that front wing.
Not ideal for Larkin, who of course has been so consistent across this season, but due to the tyre wear here and of course the mandatory 2-stop rule, it's not looking so bad. I have to say, looking up at the sky, it seems to have actually brightened up somewhat since the start of the race. Yeah. So the threat of rain may have subsided for now.
Yeah, I don't think rain is on the cards anymore, really. Maybe towards the end of the race. We know how Canadian weather can be. I mean, we've seen the iconic races around this track, and it could certainly happen, but I think at this point it looks very unlikely. Look at how bright and clear it is. It's amazing. And I mean, this is perfect racing, whether as we have a 30-second time penalty now for Dan Murphy as well. That would be his first as well. Compassion, meanwhile, was already on 2 penalties after 5 laps. So he really needs to rein it in. He really needs to sort of calm down on the penalty front, on the track limit front, because otherwise he is in danger of completely getting disqualified by the game. I think you are allowed 9 to 10
Oh, and Glock
penalties.
comes off the inside, at the first corner, and it's gone wrong. Glock and Compassion are both round, and well, the penalties Compassion's got will be at the back of his mind now, because unfortunately it's gone wrong at turn 1. Glock went for the inside line. Was he fully alongside? It was difficult to say really from the angle I saw, but both of them had half spins and as a result have fallen down to 11th and 12th respectively. Not what Glock would have wanted, especially with him having such a good start on those medium tyres, but all that work has now been undone, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if you look at the gap, you lose in the pit lane around 16.5 seconds, 16 to 16.5 roughly. If you consider that, and you look at the gaps, you see the Glock is basically right now a pit stop behind, and Compassion obviously as well. They're a pit stop behind the leaders, Louis and Lakitu. And Louis is in the pit lane now, and Louis gets a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. He was not able to slow down in time, and that is one of the dangers of this pit lane right here. Because you do have so much speed at the end of the straight, you just shoot on straight forward at over 300 kilometers an hour, and then you have to break down to 80. I mean, it's really easy to get it wrong, and that's what we saw here. Now Louis rejoins ahead of Glock, and that's what he needed, because being stuck behind Glock is the worst thing you could do here, as Glock obviously hasn't pitted yet. And yeah, you would just be stuck behind a slower driver at this point, someone who's lower down the order on a different strategy. It's just not good. In this case, 6 laps older tyres for Glock as well.
This is all playing perfectly into Lakitu's hands. I do wonder, of course, this is quite an awkward pit lane to slow down for. The way that you enter it, you're almost going full blast into it. You've got to slow it down very quickly. But I wonder, would that be another indicator perhaps that Louis is definitely not running a racing line tonight?
Not necessarily.
Oh, but Lakitu's got the same thing. Lakitu's also got a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, so that advantage he gained has gone completely.
That was his opportunity. And he messed it up. Both drivers are going to have to serve a 5-second penalty at the next pit stop, so they have to calculate this, they have to remember this, and they're going to have to basically look for a 21.5 second gap now to safely pit. That's going to make it so much harder. I mean, most drivers, especially here in the Pinnacle tier, they look at the sort of time gap, and they look at the gaps and where they would come out on track, as we have Dan retiring from the race. That is in the pit lane, so he's had enough, I think, with the damage that he had, and he had more damage. He had damage again that he just got on the last lap, and it was his right front wing that suffered some damage, and same goes for Compassion now. He got some damage as well on the exit of turn 4, which is a spot where you can damage your wing quite easily. He's got 12% damage, so on a scale of 0 to 100. It's not much, but it will impair him slightly, as Netsky and Slash now both pitting. Those are scheduled pit stops, and they did not make the mistakes of Louis and Lakitu, so maybe it's just the letter L at the start of their names. Maybe that's why, I don't know. Poor Larkin, but Larkin didn't do it. He already pitted, and he's only had 1 warning so far, no penalty at all. So maybe it's not the letter L.
Have to keep a watchful eye on his next stop then, Larkin, just in case.
Oh yeah. Obviously, each driver still has at least 1 more pit stop, with Samster, Cliffy, Chapelele, and Glock having 2 more pit stops, as they haven't pitted yet since the start of the race, because we have obviously our mandatory 2-stop rule here in place. Something that I think no other league really has. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anyone do it. And I think it's just such a good addition. I know some drivers don't like it because it makes the strategies a bit more awkward sometimes. But at the same time, it still sort of keeps you in the race, where even if you do have to pit earlier for a front wing change, all you really lose is those 5 seconds from the front wing change. You slightly adjust your strategy, and then you go. So you don't lose that. And so do you. As Samson now in the pit lane as well. That was the last of the soft runners, right where I expected the pit window to be. In fact, at the start of where I expected the pit window to be. So very surprising. Maybe a lot of the drivers are going to go soft, medium, medium instead of soft, medium, soft.
I tell you what, that's absolutely crucial. Samster actually got out just in front of Slash and Raikkonen, so that was crucial. They're actually on the same strategy though, so That shows just how much the undercut paid off for Slash and Raikkonen, because they're right behind Samster now. In fact, I would say overall, Venetsky's probably the one that's lost out most because of that. I wonder if, did he maybe have his front wing changed when he pitted? That may...
He did, yes.
That would explain the reason why he has dropped down slightly. So yeah, and right now we've got Cliffy and Chapelele in the lead. They've of course started on mediums and haven't stopped yet. Louis and Lakitu do have a solid enough lead over who is provisionally third is Samster. But of course they do have a penalty to serve. But right now they have over 5 seconds to the cars behind. So that may not cost them too much. And of course, because they've both got a penalty, it doesn't really cost them too much against each other in that regard. I'll come back to Dan Murphy quickly, actually. He said pre-race that he was just aiming to finish the race, so he didn't sound overly confident in the build-up. And unfortunately, it's kind of proven out that way. Of course, he didn't crash out, he just opted to retire. Obviously, he was collecting a lot of damage and ultimately decided that he wanted to sit out the rest of this one, unfortunately. In terms of the medium tyre runners at the front then, how do you think it's working out for them at the moment?
Looking at it, I mean, obviously Louis and Lakitu are very quick and almost catching up to them at this point, but for Cliffy and Chapelele, it's not going too badly. Glock obviously has a different issue because he had the incident with Compassion there in turns 1 and 2, so he's battling with sort of Samster and Slash and Raikkonen right now, which is not exactly what you want to have, those guys being a second and a half behind you on fresher tyres. But for Cliffy and Chapelele, right now it's looking good. The soft tyres will give them some more pace, and for them to be 13 to, like, you know, somewhere between 12 and 15 seconds ahead of this whole group of Samster, Slash and Raikkonen, I think that bodes well considering the pace difference between the softs and the mediums.
An important overtake there just into turn 1 from Netsky, who moves past Larkin up into P10. Of course, on much fresher mediums, Larkin, I think, was actually the first one to stop for medium tyres due to some damage, so he'll be looking for a slightly longer stint perhaps on those medium tyres. But Netsky making his way through. Next up for him is the other AlphaTauri of Konzo. I mean, there's a bit of a gap ahead of that. And Louis is going to take second off Chapelele into the hairpin. Will he then get DRS as well? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a double whammy in effect for Louis.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about overtaking into the hairpin. The DRS detection point is basically sort of right after turn 9, very early on in that straight between turns 9 and 10, and then you could overtake into the hairpin, get the position, and then get the DRS for the next 2 straights and pull away. It's not just a double whammy. At that point, it's a triple whammy, which is why it's such a good overtaking spot. That's something, if you prepare well for this race.
Oh, we've got 3 wide here. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got 3 wide coming out of turn 2, and it looks like Glock has actually lost 2 positions there for the price of 1. He's dropped behind his teammate Slash and IGK Raikkonen. So Glock has dropped down from 6th to 8th. I think there were 3 wide coming down the straight, but the other 2 had already passed him by the time they got into turn 2. But it was still going side by side, but Slash has really made up some good ground there, and I have to say, not working out so well for Glock at the moment, but we're talking about McLaren struggles before the race started, but things looking pretty good at the moment for Slash, it has to be said. And I really hope I don't commentators curse him.
Yeah, that's the worry, isn't it? I mean, for Slash, the issue right now is he needs to look behind more than he needs to look ahead. He's got Raikkonen behind him now with DRS, as Cliffy is now pitting. That definitely tells me it's a soft medium, or medium soft medium soft strategy, actually. As he goes on to another set of medium, so he handcuffs himself a little bit, but at the same time, it might not be too bad. Also, I had a little bird tell me, I should say one of the drivers really, tell me that there is a small rain shower predicted after the halfway point of the race. So it's going to take a bit, but you see it has gotten darker again. Remember how bright and clear it was earlier? Yeah, that's turned into what we saw right at the start of the race again. Very interesting weather change. As I said, Canadian weather can be quite tricky. We've seen the iconic Canada races here around the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and we're seeing it again, sort of. It's going to be interesting to see. Maybe a medium to intermediate strategy might be the call.
That could be an absolute dream for Cliffy as he's about to make his way past Netsky. He's actually come out pretty well there in terms of where he's rejoined, and he now moves up to 7th past Netsky. So things looking very good at the moment for Cliffy. If this rain does indeed come and they have to go into intermediates, his strategy actually could work pretty perfectly. It'll be interesting to see what Chapelele does, who still hasn't stopped yet. He's been on those mediums now for 14 laps. It might be worth getting rid of those soon.
Nah, they last 19 laps, so they should be fine for the most part. But I think he is trying to prolong this, hope that maybe the rain is coming. I think at this point it's not the right call. I think he needs to pit sooner rather than later. But if let's say the rain is coming lap 30, or really, let's say the crossover point, not the rain itself, that would be a bit late, but the crossover point between rain and dry tires comes around lap 25 to 30. At that point, if he goes on and sort of pits now, maybe at the end of lap 15, he's going to set himself up fantastically. And I think this might happen.
I think it's raining now.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. Now he wants to stay out. Now he wants to stay out. And, yeah, that's the only way you can do this now. I mean, he has to sort of run it and... Or, I mean, the other option would be... Let me see right now. If he pits now... he comes out just ahead of Knowlesy. Oh, and he's struggling. Oh, wow. He needs to let Raikkonen by. Yeah, and another one. Slash goes through. As it starts to rain,
he's got
drops are coming.
I think he's hit the wall because he's got quite heavy damage on one side of his front wing. So Chapelele is going to need to pit now. He's got no choice, surely.
It needs to be said, Chapelele has not activated his telemetry with us, so I can't see his damage, unfortunately. But yeah, he does need to pit now. I would go on to softs now, have the first pit stop, and then go on to intermediates as soon as the crossover point comes. And then you've got your 2 stops done. You don't need to pit anymore.
As Cliffy, who also started on medium tyres, moves past him. Chapelele will need to almost wait for Cliffy almost here as he pits.
Yep.
Yep, there you go.
Bit unfortunate, but it's the way it is, and too late on the brakes. Another one.
It's quite surprising there for him because, like I say, he would have had to taken it a bit carefully anyway with the car in front of him, so it's especially surprising he's got one.
Not necessarily. It does ruin your rhythm. Usually you know where to brake if you are full speed, you're heading into the pit lane.
Oh, and Compassion. Where's he crashed?
In the pit lane.
On the pit lane? Oh, interesting. What's even more interesting is that Chapelele has gone straight onto Inters.
Yeah, I think that's the wrong call. I think he would have been served better to go onto softs until the crossover point comes, just for like 2-3 laps, because it's not enough for intermediates just yet. But maybe he just likes having that more stability with the intermediate tires right now in these conditions, because obviously the soft tires or the mediums or whatever dry tire he was going to use gets very slippery in these conditions. So going on to intermediates gives you a bit more stability. They don't slide as much. They obviously can't handle that bit of water that's already on track. But yeah, I'm a bit surprised. I would have gone for the riskier strategy personally. What does he have to lose at this point? He's 12th out of 12 that are still running. What does he have to lose?
That's a very good point. Konzo is in the pits. I wonder what Konzo's going to do. Is he going to make the gamble onto intermediates as well? Yeah, he's going onto them though.
risky this. If there's no necessity for that sort of risk, I would say stay out on whatever tire you have right now. As Glock comes in as well, do they think it's already the crossover point right now? Because I'd be a bit surprised if it was.
Well, a double whammy for Glock if it isn't, because not only would he have the wrong tyres on, he also got a penalty for pitting for speeding into the pit lane, so it really was a double whammy there. unfortunately for Glock, so hopefully for his case it does get to intermediate conditions soon. I don't think it's quite there yet. Cliffy has moved past Slash. I was actually going to bring up a driver who we haven't really touched upon so far this race, but I've got to say I'm not going to say it now because I've almost jinxed him there. I was going to say IGK Raikkonen's really impressed me this race, and as I say that, he's pretty much gone off, got into the hairpin, as Cliffy nearly loses it there in the middle of a straight, which is quite strange.
Yeah, now everyone's pitting. Now everyone's pitting.
It's
I
a
think
crossover
it's
point.
obvious. It's obvious now. Everyone's thinking, okay, this is it. This is the point right now. Can they slow it down? It's hard to brake. And yeah, Netsky's not going to slow this. Oh, he is. Wow.
Larkin isn't. Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
All the L's. You called it earlier. So,
yeah, I actually did. Wow. I actually did. But Louis and Lakita obviously serving their penalties here. There goes Nosey. He does it. Oh, yeah, he was like 60 to 65 kph in an 80 zone. But yeah, everyone's now in. We haven't had the message yet that the DRS was disabled, so I'm a bit surprised still.
Well, in terms of strategy now, obviously everyone apart from Chapelele has made their mandatory 2 stops. So Chapelele will have to stop again. He's currently in 10th, and he's got Glock and Nosley behind him. Glock, I believe, has quite a few penalties from what I've sort of seen out the corner of my eye at the bottom of the screen. So it'll be interesting to see how that one develops. Of course, Louis and Lakitu have now served their penalties and are still comfortably out in the lead. They really have built quite a lead over Samster, and Louis is looking pretty dominant at this stage. Lakitu was keeping up with him early on, but that gap's just started slowly building as the race has developed.
Yeah, but it needs to be said, Louis has a 3-second time penalty while Lakitu has not. So the real time gap, so to speak, between the two drivers is about 1.2 seconds.
If he can keep that going until the end of the race, Lakitu, hats off to him, because I think this is the toughest track to avoid penalties on, so that would be a massive accomplishment from him if he can keep that going.
To speak to that point, Lakitu is the only one in this whole field to not have gotten a penalty yet, and that includes the 2 drivers who retired. Chapelele's out!
Yeah, he just got a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and then he's retired in the pit lane and left the session, so...
Did he... I think he may have realised that he is on a mandatory 2-stop, and he was the only one who has to pit.
Yeah,
and obviously in these conditions, you don't want to pit again when everyone else doesn't. I mean, you're just losing yourself so much time, and everyone else goes to the end. So maybe that's why he knows he's not going to be able to get a point here. You know, finish in P12, and he just says, you know what, I don't even want to finish in P12. Yeah, day's over. And if Nosey stays in the position he's in right now, I mean, already, if he finishes the race, he has his 3rd point secured. But he could make something very interesting, which I haven't seen before, which is a driver to finish their first 3 races all outside the top 10, but still having 3 points from the 3 fastest laps.
That's one of the more interesting stats I think I've heard. Like, that's... I don't know if that's something Nosey would have aimed for when he joined, but it's something. And like I say, he's still got every chance potentially of beating Glock, so it's interesting how that one develops. I'm a little bit surprised Chapelele did retire, because I think even with the extra stop he had to make, he would have come out around that battle, so... Yeah, bit of a strange one.
I think he would have been behind that very, very safely. Don't think it would have been close. So yeah, it doesn't really help. And I think he saw that. He saw the gap to the 2 guys behind Glock and Nosey, and he saw and thought, yeah, I'm gonna be behind them. And maybe with the fresher tyres, he would have had an opportunity to overtake them, but without DRS, obviously in the rain, very, very tricky to do so.
2 battles that are currently out on track. We've got a battle for 4th between Raikkonen and Slash, and I've got to be honest, that battle seems to have been going on all race. Those 2 seem to have been next to each other pretty much throughout. Both of them having very good races, though, it has to be said, up to now. And then this battle here that I'm focusing on, which is probably from 6th down to 9th, you could say. And in fact, Larkin got a much better exit out of the hairpin here, so I wonder if he's going to be able to have a go at Netsky. Of course, no DRS anymore, and ultimately that stops Larkin from having a go into the chicane. Netsky was quite close to Cliffy himself. So it's going to be interesting how drivers can make overtakes work now, because it's going to be a lot tougher now that we don't have DRS anymore. So maybe drivers will get creative and think of some different overtaking spots around here. But do you suspect that we'll see any more pit stops? I mean, the intermediates should last to the end from here, shouldn't they?
Yeah, the intermediates will definitely last, and I don't think that we're going to see any more pit stops from any drivers, except for maybe for damage. One thing to note is that Knowles, he falls away a little bit from Glock because his right side end plate is damaged, and his right front wing damaged in the process, obviously, as well. So it's only some minor damage. It's not massive, but obviously in these conditions, in rain, you always need every little bit of downforce you can get. It's not like in the dry where, if it's a little bit of downforce missing, you're not going to be hurt so much. Here in the rain, you need every little bit of downforce, and damage is just that much harsher in these conditions. So for Nosey, this is really, really bad right now, and I think he's not really having much of a chance here to get closer to Glock. However, the gap isn't changing much. I mean, it seems to be around 5.5 seconds. And it's not actually too bad, but it is going up for sure. And at this point, it's going to be tricky for Knowlesy. But he has the fastest lap safe. He doesn't even need to pit or anything. Plus, we had some dry running. So fastest laps aren't probably going to change unless it completely dries up towards the end. And so I think we can say that Glock and Knowlesy probably have the fastest lap safe unless they somehow switch. And Glock goes into the pits, at which point it would be Louis who has the second fastest lap, and that could get interesting as well, so you could get the full 26.
Well, I want to just bring up this point. I just saw a sign there. DRS has been enabled again.
Wait,
so,
what?
Is it drying up already?
Hold on a second. That is surprising to say the least. Let's see if Slash... Yeah, Louis is pitting.
So, we're going back onto dries then, it would seem.
Let's see. Yeah, DRS is enabled. Oh my god. What is going on in this race?
The weather just doesn't know what it wants to do.
Yeah. Louis onto mediums. At this point, mediums are the safer strategy, the safer choice.
Will anyone go for the softs, I wonder?
And that makes me now think, why did Chapelele retire? Think about that. He would have had his second pit stop right now. He would have been in P10. He could have maybe challenged, because Larkin, I think, had a stop and go that he still needs to serve right now, that he got from the second pit stop. So he would have been in play for at least a P9, and in that whole battle, in that whole group, he could have easily gotten sort of a P5 even. We know he has the pace. Sometimes it pays off to just stick it out, keep going, keep battling, and keep trying. Some drivers going onto softs, Konzo not pitting, that's certainly not the right call, but Slash, Raikkonen, and Knowlesy have gone on to softs.
Well, I was wondering, because AlphaTauris were quite close together on the road, I was wondering if Larkin might do another lap, because he was a driver behind. I certainly wasn't expecting it to be the other way around, that Konzo would stay out and Larkin would get the pit stop. Not sure about that at all. You can see the way that Samster's closing in on the back of Konzo, so that's definitely not going to work out for him. There has been a slight swap in the pit stop. Slash has got back in front of Raikkonen. They both have elected to go on the soft tyre, which is a little bit of a brave call. We'll see how that pans out. They should make the end, but I think the mediums are probably the better tyre to choose at this point. And they've got Netski right behind them as well, so that could be an interesting fight. Netski's on the medium tyre, so this could become a three-way battle for what is now 4th place. And where will Konzo drop to? It was only one more lap that he stayed out, but I think he lost a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, probably ahead of Larkin just about. He has the shorter run here to turn 2, and he should be ahead on the outside. And indeed,
it's going to be close, just about.
Trying to let him by. Is this team orders here between Larkin and Konzo? It doesn't seem so. No, Konzo does actually stay ahead, and the AlphaTauri is now battling.
Whatever AlphaTauri's strategy was, they're not sure it was the right one. I think the wrong driver stayed out. I think in effect the driver in front should have been the one that pitted, but either way, they've dropped to 8th and 9th now, and they're a few seconds behind the next car.
Here's the thing. looking at the gaps right now and deducing what the order was before they pitted, I think Larkin was the guy ahead at the time. Because Larkin lost 16.5 seconds, which is the usual pit stop loss here, plus the 5 seconds from the penalty he had, whereas Konzo didn't have a penalty, didn't change his front wing, didn't do anything, so he only lost 16.5 seconds. So Konzo, I think, was about... Larkin was about 5 seconds ahead of Konzo, 4.5 to 5 seconds. So Larkin got first service, got slowed down, and then Konzo came out right in front of him. So really, AlphaTauri just did what they did. First come, first serve. Konzo had to stay out, gained positions from it at first in the short term, but then obviously because he stayed out on intermediates in dry conditions, he lost those positions again. And more.
And with that extra pit stop, I've noticed the gap sort of at the front have sort of widened even more. The gap between Louis and Nikita now to 7.5 seconds. The gap Samster behind at 8 seconds. The top three looks pretty secure now, penalties pending, of course. As Lakitu's still got no penalties, I'd be amazed if he keeps that up.
Yeah, he's still on 1 warning, no penalties.
Especially considering we've had changeable conditions, that's even more impressive.
Yeah, but it needs to be said, Louis has been a good boy as well ever since. He's on 4 warnings right now, and he was on 4 warnings last time we talked about it, so he's been sort of warning-free ever since lap 16.
Oh, Netsky looking for a move up turn 2 against Raikkonen. Raikkonen gives him a bit of a squeeze on the curb, and Raikkonen keeps hold of a position for now. Netsky was looking for a cheeky move there up in to try and get up to 5th place. He might not need to if Raikkonen keeps getting penalties, of course, but he'll want to get that position on the track. You always feel, certainly I think as a driver, you always feel more satisfaction if you get the position on track rather than at the end of a race on penalties. And Netsky's having a much improved race today.
Yeah, it needs to be said, Netsky does have more penalties than Raikkonen. Netsky's on 12 seconds, Raikkonen on 9, so there's a 3-second gap there as well. So if Netsky wants to get the position off of Raikkonen, not only does he need to make the move, but also drive out another 3 seconds after that pass.
I think he potentially could be capable of it, but passing is not going to be simple. He's got a good chance here, though. Going into the final chicane, is he going to be close enough for a move into the last corner? He looks at it, but thinks better of it. I think there's been some team orders potentially at AlphaTauri as well, because Larkin's actually now in front of Konzo, so they have swapped around there, despite Konzo being on the slightly pressure tyres. I don't know if that was a proper battle or if that was team orders. Unfortunately, I didn't catch it, but wouldn't surprise me either way. They do seem to have quite a good bond, those two. Konzo mentioning in his pre-race press conference that he was quite encouraged the fact they were both in the points, and I think he was the only driver I saw that actually mentioned his teammate in it, so you know, it's good to see that bond that those two have, and they're looking good for yet more solid points here today.
Yeah, it needs to be said though, not everyone who didn't mention their teammate has a lack of a bond with their teammate. We know, for example, Louis and Cliffy do talk in parties. We know that from an earlier media day, from earlier pre-race interviews this season, that those two do actually talk. And I think this is now the time for Netsky. He's going for the move on Raikkonen, and I think this one's going to be easily done. And yeah, he's already ahead now. So Netsky up to P5. Now he needs to drive out those 3 seconds. That's going to be the big challenge.
Yeah, if he could get past Slash as well, that would potentially help him get that 3 seconds, extra 3 seconds that he needs on Raikkonen. We shall see. He's certainly got the pace to do it as Louis picks up another penalty, so he must have collected a few warnings in very quick time there.
Yeah, he's not the only one. Both drivers in the top 2. Lakita has also picked up his first penalty.
Wow, so they're clearly pushing out front despite the gaps and picking up the odd penalty here and there. So we have now got no drivers without a penalty, but I have to say this for me is, I don't know if you can think of any tougher ones not to pick up penalties, but for this for me is probably the toughest one.
I mean, if we include the short tracks on the F1 game, I would say USA Short is probably a bit trickier. But really just because of the sort of crossover, where you cut out the part of the track that you cut out on the short layout. Otherwise, I mean, if you talk about like long tracks, you know, the normal 22 tracks, yeah, I don't think there's too many that are that tricky as Canada is, where you have 14 corners, and basically, I mean, turn 1, I've seen Netsky get a penalty in turn 1 this race, which not really much of a spot to get a penalty there, but I mean, if you want to, you can. If you want to try it, it's certainly possible. But you say turn 1, turn 3, turn 4 if you really want to, you know, try that as well. So you have sort of 5, 6 corners where you can. Half the track is basically a track extension, a track limit penalty waiting to happen. We don't have that on any other track.
With the combination of fast chicanes and just everything just been so easy to just run slightly too much over the curb, it just makes it so easy just to collect warnings here and there without ever intending to. Just have a quick look at the moment in terms of who's got the fastest lap right now. It's actually Glock in 10th place, marginally quicker than Louis, so Glock as it stands will get the point inside the top 10. Of course Knowlesy would get the point kind of by default outside the top 10 because he's the only one still running outside the top 10, and that'll keep up Knowsley's quite incredible stat of scoring 3 points without actually being in the points. So
yeah, it would be an interesting streak to start and to hold up. It's going to be interesting to see how long he can keep that up. I mean, the first 2 races, the last 2 races, obviously, he had competition for that. In Austria, he had Cliffy and Gill, who weren't able to take the fastest lap away from him outside the top 10. And then at the US Grand Prix, he had 4 other drivers who were outside the top 10 with him, who all weren't able to match him. There was Compassion in P11, there was Dan Murphy in P12, there was then Knowlesy in 13th, there was Infamous Pillars in 14th, sorry, and Cliffy in 15th. So very, very interesting there that he was still able to keep it this time. I mean, sort of unrivaled, but the question is how much longer.
Cliffy, I was having a look as well. Cliffy's actually the only current Pinnacle 2 driver who has actually previously won here. Unless Chapelele has, and obviously I don't actually have stats for him at the moment, seeing as he was quite a relatively new addition to the league. We have a yellow flag in Sector 1, that's for Cliffy, who has gone into the wall. So Cliffy has spun, I believe that's just on the exit of Turn 2, I believe. That's quite an odd place to have a collision. He's got some front wing damage as a result.
Some.
Well, quite a lot.
Yeah, that right front wing is basically gone, apart from the very base of the wing itself. For Cliffy, this shows up on his multifunction display as a red wing. And for us here at the telemetry analysis, it shows up as 95% damage. So 100 is the whole front wing gone. The whole front wing on the right side gone. 95% is you still have that sort of base plate at the bottom, but the little winglets are off, the end plate's gone, basically everything's gone, except for that base that the rest of the front wing sits on.
Fortunately, as I was looking at Cliffy recovering, Netsky has actually got past Slash and up into 4th, so he can now try and pull away from those 2 cars who are on the soft tyres, and maybe now is at the point where the mediums are going to start to be better. However, I think you've just done the ultimate odd commentator's curse of the day, because I think Cliffy might just rob Knowlesy of that stat.
Yeah, that could very well be the case, yeah. Knowlesy now going past. And, yeah, at this point, Cliffy needs to hope, in order to get 2 points, he needs someone else to retire. Because I'm pretty sure Cliffy's going to try and go for the fastest lap, the overall fastest lap, but there's not really any point because he's 11th anyway. He's the only one outside the point, so he gets a point by default for just finishing. And it doesn't really make much of a sense in that regard. By the way,
there's Raikkonen's moving up the inside of Slash into the final chicane, and that's a very nicely done move indeed. Wasn't all done by the DRS there. He had to start out brake the McLaren driver, and he did it very nicely. So IGK Raikkonen, I would say, definitely having his best showing of the season so far, and he's up to 5th.
Yeah, it needs to be said. Louis, Netsky, Raikkonen, Slash, and Konzo all are 1 warning away from another penalty.
We haven't got anyone near in disqualification, have we?
No. Glock and Nosey are on 21 seconds, so 7 penalties. But they can afford another 2 or 3, I think, before they get near disqualification. And there is one for Slash, so he's on 15 seconds now. As is Larkin, by the way. Slash now really falling behind Raikkonen, but at the same time, looking at the gaps, Konzo is going to capitalize, but apart from that, Slash isn't going to lose any more positions.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. It's looking pretty good at the moment for IGK Raikkonen, I have to say. He could looks still pretty good, I think, to get P4 off Netsky. So that would be an incredible result for Raikkonen, certainly someone I would take into consideration for Driver of the Day when we put forward our nomination after the race, as we are now on the final lap as the 2 AlphaTauris do battle again, and this time it's Konzo moving in front of Larkin, so Konzo back in front of his teammate and up to 7th place, and they've actually got kind of back up to the sort of positions where we're certainly used to seeing those two, sort of around the top, just outside the top 5, due to the unfortunate drama for Cliffy, who is, he's going to rob Nosey of that stat, because he isn't going to be able to close. I don't think he's going to be able to close that amount of time. Although Nosey's penalties amount may come into play there. Cliffy's definitely got the fastest lap. As Louis takes the victory. Sorry, Louis, I didn't quite catch you coming across the line there. Louis takes the win here at the Pinnacle tier round 7 Montreal Grand Prix. Lakitu does close in a bit with the penalties, but not enough. Samster didn't really see much of him this race. Didn't really get much airtime, but congratulations to him. He gets onto the podium. Let's see when it all ends up between these 3. Netsky 4th across the line, but he's going to lose that to Raikkonen by 7/10. And does Konzo leapfrog Slash? Yes, he does. So Konzo up to 6th, Slash drops to 7th, Larkin 8th. Glock, despite numerous dramas, is looking good for 9th. And then it's a case of, does Nosey keep up that incredibly odd statistic? We're about to find out, I guess.
He will, yes. He's 15 seconds down on penalties on Cliffy, but he's only sort of 9 seconds ahead on track, so unless... and Cliffy is 2 warnings away from another penalty, so it should be fine for Cliffy to move up to 10th, unless he... No, he doesn't bottle it in the final corner, and he moves it up indeed. So Nosey does keep up the stat after all. He also achieved another stat here for this race. He got the most penalties. 24 warnings and 24 seconds.
That's probably not so much of an impressive stat, that one, but it's
not the best.
But yeah, no, fair play to him. And of course, as a result of Cliffy getting that 10th place on penalties, he gets that extra point because he got the fastest lap on a 109.4 right at the end. Yep. So that's an extra point for Cliffy. So not pretty well salvaged there, considering what happened towards the end of a race. But here is our classified race results. We've got Louis in 1st place, Lakitu 2nd, Samster 3rd, IGK Raikkonen in 4th place, great result for him. Netsky, his best result in 5th, Konzo in 6th, we've got Slash 7th, Larkin 8th, Glock 9th, Cliffy in 10th rather, and Knowsley keeping up that record in 11th, and of course the 3 DNFs of Chapelele, Compassion and Dan Murphy. That brings an end to the Canadian Grand Prix. Of course, Louis, now he couldn't seal the title here, but he's moved very close to the brink of it and can seal it next week at Australia. I believe at this point only Gil and Lakitu can prevent that from happening. So those are your 3 contenders left going to Australia next week. In terms of driver of the day, then, who would your nomination go to, and what would you ask them?
I don't want to take Raikkonen away from you because you already hinted in that direction. So I'm gonna go for Lakitu to stay within one penalty over this whole race and only getting 4 warnings. I think, as you said as well, it's very remarkable. And the question I would have for Lakitu is basically, what was the secret to keeping or staying mostly penalty free and only getting 1 3-second penalty, whereas everyone else had 6 or more?
Very good. Yeah, and you might be surprised to hear this, but I'm actually going to go for IGK Raikkonen. And my question,
no way.
And my question to him would be, what was going through his head when he was obviously battling Slash all race long, and what did it mean to him to eventually become victorious in that scrap that they had all race? So that would be my question to him.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, obviously, once again, we want to thank our sponsors. For one, Next Level Racing, who are going to provide the wheel stand to the Going Gets Tough award winner, which will be handed out for a driver who has done every single race, finished every single race, and participated in all the pre-race, post-race interviews, driver of the day press conferences if they are nominated, driver press conferences, all that stuff, who are really living the dream of an F1 race driver. And of course, big thank you as well to our other sponsor, Liam13, who is providing the trophies for all the winners of every single tier here at One Hub, and for the Constructors Champions as well.
And if you want to check out Liam13, you can do so on Twitch. If you go to twitch.tv/Liam13, you can check out his streams there. So yeah, massive thank you as always to Austin for joining me in commentary. Have you got any last thoughts about the race tonight?
I mean, I've never seen the weather like this. That was very much surprising, but I gotta say, more of this in the future, please. And I'm very much looking forward to Australia next week, October 9th. Once again, on the One Hub channel, the Prospect tier is going to start at 6:15 p.m. UK, and we here at the Pinnacle tier are going to start at 8:30 p.m. UK time on October 9th, that is, 2020, with the Australian Grand Prix around the Albert Park circuit.
Cannot say I'm looking forward to that. I'm absolutely cannot wait to see who comes out on top of that, and I believe as well we'll have Zach back for that round, so that'll be great to see how he gets on as well. So yeah, it's been an absolutely fantastic race this evening. We will see you same time next week at 8:30 for the Australian Grand Prix. My name's Jake, that's been Austin, and we will catch you on the flip side.